Hey everyone, welcome to the panel. So quick introduction. So I'm Alpin. I'm one of the partners at Borderless Capital. A lot of the teams here are portfolio companies. Really excited to dive in on this. I think Solana is at a pivotal point and a lot to unpack. So let me do this. I'm going to start with a round of intros for the team. All the teams here, you can start from the graph, and then we can go all the way down the row so that everybody gets to know who you guys are.
Perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Giuliano, and I'm a product manager for one of the core development teams at the Graph. So very briefly, the Graph is an indexing protocol specifically designed to, index all on-chain data, no matter how large the size. Specifically, the value prop there is that with the decentralized network, you kind of have load balancing, you have fallbacks, you have a permissionless environment to extract data. So at your convenience, you can really meet any use case you need as you can, manipulate the data as you see fit.
Thanks. I'm Kyle. I help lead ecosystem and consumer BD at Pith. We are a high-frequency app chain forked from Solana solely for the purpose of Oracle's real-time data price feeds from whether it's traditional finance assets or crypto assets. We bring those on-chain for apps to use permissionlessly, however they see fit.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katya Chernopolska. I'm the head of growth at Wormhole Foundation. I've worked in this space for a few years now, starting my career at Maple Finance, worked at Aave, worked at Polygon, inevitably made the decision to move into interop after seeing how many challenges there were in that space. Wormhole is an interoperability protocol. We have a suite of projects that are built on top of the general message passing protocol. That includes NTT, a native token transfer framework, as well as our new settlements product, which is intent-based.
Jason here, I'm the co-founder for Solana. We're building the first hardware-accelerated SVM L1 cluster that's capable of achieving 1 million TPS, and we're also transparently accelerating Solana. I'll, explain more, what it means later. So that's who I am.
Yeah, so something interesting is that I moderated a panel here yesterday about interop. We're going to get into that maybe a little bit later. I volunteered to moderate this one because I think the intersection of what's happening in Solana right now is so exciting. Obviously, there's a lot of transformation happening. So Solana's proven itself in a lot of different ways this last cycle, flipping Ethereum in terms of key economic metrics, and then also on the performance side. But now we're seeing like tremendous innovation just in the overall architecture, right? We have so many new SVMs coming out. Some of them are here on the panel. I think one of the things I want to talk about or ask about is what does this new ecosystem within Solana kind of VMs actually entail? How does it affect what you guys are working on? Before we get into more specific questions, I want to understand, like, you guys are seeing this kind of evolution and this kind of explosion happening. It wasn't necessarily expected, I think, in the original visions of how Solana was going to scale, but we're seeing more and more innovation there, and I'd love to get everybody's comments on that.
Yeah, sure. I can start. So at Pith, we're mainly focused on real-time price data. So we're heavily focused on Solana, the DeFi ecosystem specifically, whether it's Sparlin platforms, perpdexes. Perpdexes are our main bread and butter. So we want to be sure to provide the fastest feeds possible, the lowest latency possible, the most assets possible, whether it's crypto or stocks. I kind of see this cycle specifically, a lot more TradFi adoption in trading and borrow lending assets. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation towards tokenizing stocks or commodities or other RWAs. So there's going to be I think Solana is going to be the home for that. Realistically, it's positioned as the financial layer of DeFi at the moment. So that's kind of what we're looking at for Solana's ecosystem right now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak more about vertical scaling. I think Solana has done very well and also has a lot of benefits in terms of the end user experience. SVM itself is, in my view, superior to EVM when it comes to the end user UX. You don't have to approve a transaction and then send it or swap it. That's effectively 2 transactions you have to make in order to make a swap, right? Same thing when you interact with the lending protocols and etc. And that is why you see the massive flow of retail liquidity, which is often a precursor for institutional liquidity from EVM to SVM. From SVM from EVM to SVM. So that's a superiority over there. And the second thing is higher throughput. But we also noticed that Solana is pretty fast. The highest recorded TPS on the mainnet is 7.4 thousand transactions per second. If you were to take it to 1 million, if you want to make it faster, right, to 1 million TPS per second, you would have to look at a different network architecture. So I do believe Solana is going to make, further improvements to it, but the approach they were taking is with orders of magnitudes of improvement because it has to change the network topology, how it broadcasts the traffic and etc. If you do the calculation of 1 million TPS with 1 kilobyte per transaction, you'll be arriving at 1 gigabytes of network speed, which is 10 gigabits, the unit that people typically use to measure, like your bandwidth. That's how much it costs to just receive the transactions, 10 gigabits per second. That's like a lot of traffic. So you have to redesign a network topology for everything to work. So that's the reason why we're choosing a different path to transparently scale Solana.
Yeah, thanks. I also want to bring up like something that's kind of also in the background. We've seen also this cycle the rise of hyperliquid and the performance, the amount of liquidity, the revenues, and I think that is definitely pushing a lot of teams on the Solana side to accelerate and to really innovate. I think clearly there's a lot more complexity to what's being built in the Solana ecosystem. It would be great to get your views because a lot of you guys are committing a lot of resources to the Solana ecosystem to think about like, well, what do you see like the future of this like, and how is it affecting your roadmap and how you guys develop?
Yeah, I don't mind taking this one to start. It's definitely a good point, specifically kind of what Jason pointed out, which is the scalability of the sheer size. So currently, the Solana block, is somewhere around 40 to 50 megabytes on average, maybe slightly more than that, and that affects data ingestion for sure. You need to be able to process that amount of those packets of data as they're coming in really fast, and there's an expectation on the consumer side that they want something low latency, right? So as Solana keeps scaling and growing, the data, specifically the data teams, they really have to look at maybe on the fly reading data, scaling up workers so you can process all of this sheer amount of data, right? So those are some thoughts that come to mind for us. That would definitely have to go into the product roadmap, specifically kind of on the fly reading, I would say. I'd like to pass this off.
Yeah, I'll chime in here. Solana is really pushing a lot of ecosystems forward too. I think we can see the EVM ecosystem is really trying to push on latency and throughput. The challenge with us though is that while Solana is getting faster, some of these other ecosystems can't keep up. And so in order for us to be able to pass a message from Optimism or Arbitrum into the Solana ecosystem, for you to take the traditional wormhole path, you still have to wait the 18 minutes, which is kind of unfortunate. So part of that in wanting to keep up with the speed of retail liquidity and now oncoming institutional capital is our push into Intense. I think everybody was, we've made great strides in the underlying general message passing protocols. I think we're going to continue to see that evolution continue. We're working on ZK, we're working on new verification models, but ultimately still not fast enough. So it's been great to see that level of innovation to try to keep up with the user demand and user expectations.
Yeah, I think want to speak more on the hyperliquid point. You see how people are gradually moving towards decentralized perps, especially for perp traders. For spot, not so much, because I think there are different segment of users, and also very hard to have that liquidity of tokens actually deployed on the different dexes, unless it's AMMs, right? But if you just do a quick search of all the different tokens, how they're distributed on different exchanges, it might be surprising that even if there's like hundreds of millions of dollars of trading volume, the percentage of tokens that are actually allocated on that exchange is probably like 4, 3, 5%. It's not actually that much. The reason I'm mentioning this is because it's actually hard to build a spot index. But going back to the hyperliquid point, I think because there's a trend for perp to be in a decentralized way, and on Solana we have I think Drift and also Jupiter. So those are the two big ones. But if you have ever interacted with them, you will notice that every single time you open an order, you have to sign a transaction, right? So there's like, it kind of is a disruptive user experience. And the second thing is that it takes like 5, sometimes 10 seconds to confirm, or just handing there. And like after 60 seconds, your transaction expired. And that is not the type of user experience that people want if you compare it with Hyperliquid. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to the chain. Making everything on chain and also improving the chain. So part of the things that Solr is pushing for is to make our chain or transaction confirmation real time. So you know how when you send a blockchain transaction, you're sending it and you're querying the blockchain state to see if it's successful. Can you do it in one API call, as if you're making a post request, just in the Web2 sense, right? Making a post request and getting back the response. As long as the design or the sequencer model is fast enough, you should be able to do that, because that's just like if you think about Ethereum versus the Arbitrum experience, right? Different architecture, but Ethereum versus Arbitrum experience, you notice that Arbitrum is more closer towards the Web2 experience, and therefore you have GMX, right? So how can we recreate that? Is the mission, or something that we find very interesting.
Thanks. One of the things that we at Borderless are really passionate about and have a lot of conviction around is interoperability. And I think that what's interesting in what's happening right now is that Solana is definitely attracting a lot of attention, a lot of liquidity, a lot of users. And yet we continue to see new layer ones, whether it's across the SVM ecosystems or we're seeing in others. I think it would be great to get a sense of how we think about Solana evolving in a multi-chain world, and how you guys, in each of your projects, I mean, you guys can decide who wants to speak on this point, but how you guys address, more complexity in runtimes, more complexity in terms of different types of VMs and things like that. And how you are looking to address that while also maintaining kind of performance and making sure that like Solana is like at the front and center of some of these types of kind of transactions and applications.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Like, at least from our scope, and I know some people on this panel might have more difficulty handling that because of the complexity of their platform. But in the case of data indexing, what's most important is that the way we're presenting that data to the end user has to be a unified user experience, right? So it might be that we extract data differently and we pipe it differently. In the case of Solana, of course, we're using a parallel streaming engine, and then on other platforms like Ethereum mainnet, you might not need that level of kind of speed of ingestion, right? But the important thing is that the interfacing product with these different data sources is the same. And you can't limit any user to one specific type of way of ingesting data, because everyone has a different use case, everyone has different needs. So the most important thing you can do is have what we call like different syncs, right? So you can choose to write custom APIs, you can choose to sync it to a database, you can choose to sync it to like flat files, or just keep the binary data and write your own kind of way to manipulate that, right? So, or decode that data. So that's what's most important, is making sure that no matter what the source is, how you're extracting that data, you really unify the developer experience. Right.
Yeah, thanks. I also want to hear a perspective from Pith. Thanks. You guys have basically an SVM-based kind of stack, but you guys serve like almost the entire Web3 ecosystem. Would be great to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are born from Solana. It's essentially our home. Our entire tech stack is Solana based, but we do service over 100 different blockchains now at the moment. That's including move chains, EVM chains, you name it. We're there, even CosmWasm. So everybody has a different use case for price feeds or the data that they're trying to receive from us. So we're extremely agnostic. We're neutral. We don't necessarily mind where you live. We chose to use the Solana tech because we believed it was the best. So that's where we built. But use cases are ultimately endless. We don't necessarily believe that one chain is the end-all be-all chain, because each chain has its own pros and cons. There's different reasons to use different chains, but abstracting technicalities away in the crypto space is extremely important to onboard more users. There's a lot of new chains that have come out that are actually like doing an amazing job of abstracting things away. Both like Monad or Bearchain, they're bringing in new users that aren't necessarily crypto native. A lot of apps are executing on their chain not without really knowing that they're using crypto assets. So we want to support everybody possible that we can.
And I know, Pith Data Association to some extent, and also Dura Labs are involved with Fogo and new kinds of stacks that are out there. Anything you can comment on that?
Um, Yeah, at Pitt Data Association, we do not have any association with Fogo. That is a common misconception right now. The connection there is Dura Labs. Dura Labs is the engineering team, and they work on different projects. So that's really all I could say.
Got it. Yeah, thanks. And on the so this interop aspect, how does Solana think about interop?
Yeah, I think interoperability and composability are very important. So take the Ethereum or slash EVM L2s, for example, just for the sake of the examples, you would have to go to a bridging site to bridge your ETH or whatever asset, and then you go back to your wallet, you switch the endpoint, and then you can interact, right? After a while, your assets finally arrive. I think that's not the user experience people really want, right? You just think about how many steps and signing you have to do. It's probably going to be 4 because you have to authorize the asset and then swap it, and then authorize the assets again, and then do the actual thing you want. So just to perform the operation, you need 4 signing, and you have to wait 4 times, right? So, and then the second thing is you actually need the wallet to support you, because if the wallet doesn't support, then the token doesn't show up, right? So you need the wallet support. You also need the dApp support. So you actually need, and also you need the users. So you're actually asking for all 3 parties to come together at the same time, which I feel is a little bit harder. So Solar's SVM is, you can call it SVM on SVM. It's there are surprisingly interesting models you can use. So we actually don't require wallet support. Even if you use Phantom, you can interact with Solar, and you don't even know about it. And the reason is because Solana SVM transactions don't really have the chain ID as part of the payload serialization. Only have the block hash, right? So you can play around with that, and not having the users to actually switch the wallet to switch to a different network in order for the signing to work. And the second thing is that one Solana transaction actually supports many instructions, so you can do a lot more things at one go without deploying a smart contract, which is, when you think about end user interaction, that's what typically happens. Then we just need to give the dApp and SDK, and they can transparently offload everything to the Solar Infinity SVM public cloud or chain. So that's how we're thinking about the end user experience from adoption perspective. Just one SDK for the user. From a user perspective, you don't even know that you are operating on another chain. So that's how we're thinking about this. But the end effect is that when you buy something, you click on it, it's done. Or you sell something, you click on it, it's done. That's it.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks. This kind of relates to a broader point. Maybe with, like, the last part of the questions, and then you guys can talk about anything else you guys want to mention to the crowd out here. Um, you know, like I said, I think Solana's proven something in this cycle, which is that it's clearly performant, it's clearly economically growing significantly. Um, when we talk about like the demand beyond native crypto users, it seems like all of you are kind of tasked with making that kind of evolution happen, right? Whether it's institutions or whether it's broader consumer adoption. I think that's obviously what everybody's looking to see now. And regulatory environment has changed considerably, which we're expecting to be a positive tailwind for providing and creating more innovation. Maybe if you guys can speak a little bit about how you guys are contributing to that, or what it is you guys are seeing, or what are some of the challenges in achieving that. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in here. Yeah, it's been really exciting to see just how much the ecosystem has changed over the last few years. Even you just look at the blockchain ecosystem broadly, I never thought that we'd be launching a chain a day, but here we are. I think growth has really outpaced a lot of expectations. I see, we're starting to see a lot of retail and mainstream adoption, which is awesome. But I think all of us in this room are used to chewing glass and going through these really tough user flows on using these applications. We're getting there, we're getting closer, but we're still, inevitably, um, behind the Web 2 experience. And so part of that, our responsibility, is to be able to help make this chain abstraction thesis be more real. Right now, like I just mentioned earlier, we launched our wormhole settlement product. It's an intent-based architecture that allows for any-to-any swaps in sub-finality times, which is unbelievable, right? So if I want to ape into some meme coin on Solana, but have a position out on Arbitrum, I can just take whatever I have on Arbitrum, have it deposited into Solana in like 10 seconds, and I don't even need to know that that transfer happened, right? Like, there's been a lot of great strides in bridging and in the asset transfer like category recently, and that's a great use case for stablecoins, for payments. Tron is doing unbelievable numbers with USDT, and it's not because people are aping into yield farms there. It really is because people want to be transacting in USDT. They want to be able to pay their mortgages in USDT, and they have great on and off ramp experiences. And so but right now the challenge there is, Tron gas fees are spiking, and they're looking for new homes for payments settlements. So Solana continues to be a really favorable spot for payments issuers, for meme coins, for retail, and our objective is to allow builders and users to build on whatever network they want to, without having to think too hard about the plumbing in the background.
Yeah, being chain agnostic is, I think, one of the most important things in crypto at this point. Um, how our price feeds work for the apps to use, we're publishing data to PithNet specifically. So as soon as we launch a price feed, whether it's a stock or a crypto asset or whatever, that's available on any chain. So it doesn't matter. We don't need to do separate deployments for each chain. Like you said, at one point it did feel like there was multiple chains launching daily or weekly. I think it's probably 15 over the past few months or so at this point. So that's a lot of extra development work if you need to create some new deployment for each chain, deploy all of your product stack on that new chain. It's a headache, and but yeah, we saw that extremely early. That's why we have an app chain specifically for price feeds and data, and yeah, it's extremely important for abstraction.
Yeah, I think a thing to add here is really to even think about, because the question is really about like scalability in a sense, right? And I know a lot of, at least friction from the data side is that, one of the most important things when talking to major protocols and traders was, of course, performance and reliability, right? So we focused a lot deeply on, how to maybe move away from, traditional modal ways of extracting data from the network. Specifically like an RPC, for example, this had like unstable data, unstable latency, major spikes, and we really wanted to find a way to bring that down to what protocols were telling us, 1 to 2 second blockhead drift, right? So the time the block gets confirmed to the time it's retrievable, or technically not confirmed, but when the block's available to retrievable. And, through this whole process of learning with these developers is we found like, one thing that would be super helpful for scalability would be an archive node, right? So to back process state, count changes are super important, right? We're starting to store that as of January 1st, but to some users, it might be niche, but some users have that need to go back even further. And additionally, like IDLs, right? So IDLs have caused some friction for a lot of developers. The version control, the lack of a standard per se, and the breaking changes, right? So if someone wants to historically decode data and only the newest version is functional, that's a big problem, right? So these are issues that, of course, like Solana's been great scalability wise with transaction speed, with posting data, but there's some work there in terms of from the data side decoding, I would say mostly, and like Jason had said about you need the state to confirm certain actions, right?
Yeah. So I guess like 2 points for me. First is that whenever there is a breakthrough in TPS or UI UX interaction, I think there's always going to be new waves of innovation that would draw more consumers in, just because the range of applications that you can build is closer to Web 2, more closer to Web 2, and then just more expensive. And I don't know what's going to come, but I think that's definitely the right direction to go, like more real time. But my second point, that's sort of what Solana is working on, right? And then the second point is that I think one big hurdle to consumer adoption, application aside, right, product market fit aside, is actually security. Especially after what happened with Bybit, you see a single point of compromise is able to just steal the entire $1.5 billion worth of assets. And with I mean, there are also other sort of fun stories that we hacked the protocol 2 days ago. Was a pretty big one on Twitter.
Yeah, what did you guys do?
So they use I won't name companies, but they use like what's the thing called? Key providers. So these Google authentication, like Google login and stuff. And then because of their implementation, there's a particular privilege escalation for signing. So we actually got the server to sign whatever we wanted to sign, and the signature was to transfer all the assets out from their contract. We returned it. If you look on chain, you'll be able to see that. Probably there's going to be a disclosure coming up soon. It's a really big one, but just want to say that security is actually a big thing, because for Web2 consumers, unless they're speculative traders who are very much drawn towards, aping into meme coin. Like I have a friend who aped, 1 million and then end up making tens of millions of dollars. I mean, that risk reward ratio pays off, which is great if you're that type of person. But for mainstream adoption, you really need assurance that no matter what I do, somebody's going to be responsible and I can have my money back. Right. So that's a big one.
Yeah, it's really been interesting to see how like crypto Twitter sentiment has been against security recently. Everybody's like, to hell with decentralization. We don't really care. You should care, and institutions care. And I think it's a great call out that, I want to continue to see those types of strides being made in the security side of the industry.
Nobody cares until they need to care when it's important, basically.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think, the question around adoption, in terms of, whether it's on the consumer side, payments, on the e-commerce side, in terms of institutions and funds coming to, chains like Solana, at scale, is one of the biggest factors that, is going to stress the system. And all of you guys are obviously working on different aspects of that problem, right? Anything else you guys want to share with the team about what you guys are building that you guys are excited about going forward?
Just check out Portal Bridge. Check out our new wormhole intense protocol. Has a hub on Solana, far more capital efficient than all other intense infrastructures. So check it out, and then tweet at me if you don't like it.
We have a Explorer page running at explorer.solana.org that's running at 500,000 TPS per second right now, I believe. If you want to reverse engineer, you can get the RPC endpoint because they just run the front end. But stay tuned for the actual rollout closer to the start of Q3. We don't give grants to developers, sorry. So the mental model here is that we're very pragmatic, right? We incentivize the end users, and then we help you lower the user acquisition cost, but then we make it a perfect competition. It's a Darwinism that I personally believe in for the apps, to compete with each other, and ultimately the best one would thrive. Arranged ecosystem, I've seen so many cases, it just didn't really work out. So that's why I just want to explain there's no grants for developers. Sorry.
You didn't have to defend. We knew what you were talking about. So a few months ago, Pyth launched a new oracle at 1 millisecond latency called Pyth Laser. This is mainly targeted for the perpdexes that want to be the most competitive product that they possibly can. Obviously, Hyperliquid is kind of the main statement protocol in the space right now, and there's plenty of other projects that are going after them. But in order to do that, you need speed, especially if you're fighting against a slightly more centralized product. So that's what we mean to tackle with Pyth Laser.
Yeah, and on our side, I mean, Of course, there's a lot of need. Like Solana is massive data set, right? Like just the transaction instruction data alone is, 500, more than 500 terabytes. I'm just gonna just leave it there as kind of a plateau. But we built a technology at the Graph called Substreams, which is now, it's a gRPC based stream, and it's capable to reprocess all this data from Genesis, within a day or two, right? So depending on the workload you have tasked there, and we can scale that up, right? We can add more workers to the parallel cluster and really can push the boundaries there. And most importantly, I kind of already touched on this, but we launched an account changes stream now. So as of January 1st, we are a historical data source for account changes for those that it's important to, right? And for a lot of protocols, that is very important to do protocol level accounting, distributing rewards, things of that nature, right? So
mind if you give us a overview of the cost structure if you were to run, from the Genesis? Just curious. Yeah.
So they're like transaction instructions data from Genesis.
Yeah. For example, like something like that, because like Solana has like petabytes of data, right? So like, how much does it cost you guys to do that? Since we're on the scaling part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is above that, right? And of course, we're compressing that on disk. The end user obviously has to compress it himself, but yet we are because we're a protocol, the most important thing is traffic usage to the network. So we're very generous on cost, right? So we're charging $25 a terabyte. Of course, if you were to do the entire chain from Genesis, of course, we can have a conversation about maybe discounting that. But it is about $25 a terabyte right now. And to stay in real time on Solana, every month you're looking at about 35 terabytes. So very reasonably, like $700, you can stream all of the data that you want from Solana into your database or whatever other sync you may have desire, right? But yeah, so from Genesis, it could be a couple $1,000s, but
that's actually a good deal. I would say.
It's not bad. Not bad. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all. And if anyone has any questions for any of the teams up here, you guys can talk to them after the panel. All right. Thanks.
It was a pleasure, guys. Thank you.